Hi, I'm Brett Johnson. You know me, former United States most wanted cyber criminal, now good guy, or as the United States Secret Service called me, the original internet godfather. Now, how do you get that title? Well, I'll tell you how you get that title. 39 felonies, a place on the United States most wanted list, an escape from prison, and I built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It was a precursor of today's darknet and darknet markets, and it laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime channels operate today. And yes, Virginia, that shit will land you in prison. Now, look, there's a whole story behind all that, but we ain't got time for that today. Why? Well, because today it's time for the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, protecting yourself from people like me. When we come back. All right, so we're back to the Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode, protecting yourself from people like me. People like me, yes, people like me. Let's be honest. You don't get put on the United States most wanted list because you're benefiting society. I mean, that just don't happen. You get put on the United States most wanted list because they want your ass off the street. You are not helping, you are hurting. You are hurting so much that the entire United States government is after you. So U.S. most wanted, protecting yourself against people like me, or more specifically, protecting yourself against the type of person that I used to be. And what is that? So we know, I've mentioned before that I was a United States most wanted cyber criminal. 39 felonies. Those 39 felonies had to do with refining modern financial cybercrime as we know it. If you look at account takeover, credit card fraud, phishing attacks, synthetic fraud, refunding fraud, all these different types of frauds that take place online, I'm the son of a bitch that's responsible for implementing and refining a lot of it. Not only that, but I built a platform that modern cybercrime channels operate on today, that trust mechanism, the forums, things like that. I'm responsible for building that, installing it, and allowing cyber criminals to operate and work together. Nothing to be proud of, but here's the secret. Those 39 felonies, that U.S. most wanted, that was not my first day on the job. Most people already know that, although on this show, I've not given my biography yet. I'm going to do that. I've got 3 episodes this week. Next week, I'm going to do 2 episodes on the Brett Johnson story. So those who are new to the show, who have not heard my story before and how I was given the opportunity to turn my life around, well, that's next week. Yes, it's a little late coming, but I wanted to launch this show without the obligatory, beginning of, well, who meet the host? This is your host. This is it. That's just me. I wanted to try to get some stuff done first and then give the bio. Whether I was smart in doing it like that, I don't know. I don't know, but hey, it's worth a try. So as I said, this was not my first day on the job, the cybercrime stuff. My life of crime, most people know, and I think I've mentioned it on this show before, my life of crime began when I was 10 years old. 10 years old. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. And yes, it matters that I'm from Eastern Kentucky. It's a different type of mindset over there. Unemployment is through the roof. It's like a third world country. People live in abject poverty. We've had over the years, John F. Kennedy came down and he said, oh, we're going to help you. Well, not so much. Kind of just bent the people of Eastern Kentucky over and showed them what for. And since that visit, all these other presidents have visited Eastern Kentucky and said, oh, we are here to help. We are here to help. And by and large, they have hurt more than help. And that's pretty much the history of the people of Eastern Kentucky. Truly is a very poor part of the country where people don't have a lot of power, a lot of political power, and they're taken advantage of. It's in the heart of coal country. You've got a massive amount of resources there. And if the people benefited from the resources that are on their land, they would be okay. But that's not the way it happens on this planet. It tends to be that if you've got resources and you can't defend those resources or take advantage of them yourself, someone will come in and take advantage of you for them. So there's that whole history. But the reason I say Eastern Kentucky, there's this mentality, there's this mindset of, and I adopted that as well. If you're going to do something, you can't rely on someone to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So Eastern Kentucky is one of these areas, and I guess there's parts of the panhandle of Florida like that, Louisiana, maybe some part of the area where you live in that, you know, if you're not fortunate enough to have a job, you may be involved in some sort of scam, hustle, fraud, whatever you want to call it. Ha! My mom was basically the captain of the entire fraud industry. And when I say that, what I mean is at one point, this woman steals a 108,000 pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer, just trams it down the road. At another point, she takes a slip and fall in a convenience store, tries to sue the owner. We had a neighbor she acted as a pimp for. That's my mom, and that's just a sampling of some of the stuff that this woman did. I mean, it was crazy. Would stand beside the road with a bucket collecting donations for homeless people, abused women, children in need, all that kind of stuff. So that was my mom. My dad wasn't like that. My dad was a very good man. It was just, you know, I told my dad the other day, I was like, you know, you were always a good man. There was just a point in time that you forgot you were a good man. And that point in time was those years he was married to mommy. Let me get a drink here. Oh, I got my Stitch coffee cup. Well, Brett, that's not very manly. No, it's not. But you know what? I really like Stitch. I like him a lot. That little fucker's entertaining. And he's a real disruptor too. So anyway, my dad, he became the enabler. He did. He was scared of my mom leaving. He came from a very good family. He had never been a victim of abuse, and everyone that was in my mom's orbit was a victim of abuse. She went through this. She constantly tested people to see how far she could abuse them or misuse them, and them still come back and show her love. So that was what her entire life was about. Now she's still alive, and she's just a very lonely person, has nobody around at all, really, because she has abused those around her. But my dad, you know, he had never encountered anything like that. So he gets married to my mom. The abuse starts evidently almost immediately. He doesn't know how to cope with that, and he was scared of her leaving. Maybe there's a thing like Stockholm syndrome for abused spouses. I don't know. You stay in that environment so long, you're like, I love him, I love her, I love him. It'll work out. Well, that was him, or I'm afraid they'll leave. Even worse. Well, he was scared she would leave, so he basically became the enabler of the family. If she wanted to commit a crime, he would co-sign on it. Oh, yeah, all gung-ho. Make no mistake about it. If she wanted to abuse someone, and as I just said, she was an extremely abusive person. A lot of mental games, but she could be physical. You know, I remember she was physical with me and Denise. I remember Denise at one point. She was, my mom was beating us with a belt buckle, and Denise kicked her and put her through a closet. And Denise claims that was the last time that mom ever touched us. I clearly remember my mom starting to beat us with a belt again. And because we had accidentally broke like a statue on a table, and we were scared to death. So we had got the super glue out. We were young. We got the super glue out and had tried to glue it back together. But, you know, when you're young, your dexterity is not great. So we had tried to glue it together, and you could see the crack pretty clearly. You know, to me and Denise, it looked good. But to my mom, she noticed it within a couple of days. Goes off the handle, grabs the belt, starts to beat us. And I clearly remember that about 3 swipes in, I grabbed the belt, jerked it away from her, and very calmly said, "You're done. You'll not touch us again." And that was the last time that my mom touched us. Well, show on the doll where she touched you. Not like that. I mean, beat us or, you know, physically abused us like that. So that was the last time. But, you know, so my life of crime, my mom leaves my dad. We were in Panama City, Florida at that point in time. I was 10. My sister Denise was 9. We moved from Panama City back to Hazard, Kentucky, heart of coal country. And my mom, like I said, she was abusive. She, at that point, she beat us until, I don't know, we were 11, 12, 13, something like that. And I remember when she was married to my dad, she used to bring men home in front of him. He would literally cry, beg her not to do it. She'd do it anyway. Finally, she leaves him. Like I said, we moved from Panama City back to Hazard. We didn't know, me and my sister didn't know we were leaving. My great-grandfather had died, and my mom had told us that we were going up to the funeral, and we would be back in a week or so. So, of course, my mom didn't pack any of our clothes. She packed every one of her clothes. My dad evidently didn't know what was going on. And she leaves, and I don't get to see my dad for years after that. Absolutely for years. My mom, we get to Eastern Kentucky, and she keeps up those partying ways. And I'm the kid that gets the worst part from mom and dad. From mom, of course, I get the criminal mindset. Of course I do. From my dad, I get that fear of being abandoned, of the people who I love leaving me. And it is it's a real fear. It's something that I have dealt with and had my entire life. And back when you're a kid, you know, I had my mom used to tell me and my sister that she was going to leave, that she had given up her entire life for me and my sister, that she was going to leave and never come back, that we would find her dead in a ditch somewhere. You know, this was constant. This was constant. And when you're a child, you don't have the tools to cope with that kind of stuff. You don't have those tools. You don't understand that. That's real. You know, when your mom takes you in the living room and tells you that she's sold her soul to Satan so that you and your sister can have a good life, as an adult, you may realize, oh, that's bullshit. But when you're a child, when you're 7, 8 years old, you're like, that shit's real. So mom would leave me and my sister at home for days as she went out and partied or whatever else she was doing. This one time I was 10, where my life of crime began. I was 10, Denise was 9. Didn't have any food in the house. Denise, I was a kid who would post up at the window, see if mom was coming home sometimes. Sometimes I'd walk out into the street, see if she was driving home. Denise wasn't like that. Denise was just angry all the damn time. To this day, my sister is still angry. Still. Well, back then, this one time where it began is mom had been gone for a few days. She had left us at home. We didn't have any food in the house. Didn't have any place we could get food. I mean, our grandparents lived upstairs, but they didn't want us up there. I mean, we were allowed to, my grandfather, I mean, that entire side of the family were criminals, and all of them very abusive, all of them. My grandfather, Paul, he had raised his house, and underneath he had converted to apartments. So we lived in one of those apartments underneath. We were allowed to, me and my sister were allowed to take 1 bath a week in an inch of water. Seriously, in an inch of water. He would actually come in and look and see if we had ran too much water. And if we had, that was our asses at that point. As far as eating, you know, could we have went upstairs? We could have, but they always talked about us really bad if me and my sister went up there and said we were hungry or anything like that. So mom had been gone for a few days, no food in the house. And Denise walks in one day and she's got this pack of pork chops in her hand. And I'm like, where'd you get that? She's like, I stole it. And I'm like, shit, show me how you did that. So she takes me over, shows me how she's stealing food. And I'm like, that is the best idea ever. Let's do that. So we start stealing food, get to where we're wanting a sandwich. Denise was, what she did is she took me over to A&P and she showed me how she was stuffing food down her pants. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that. So we start stealing that. And we get to where we want a sandwich. You know, you're a kid, you want a sandwich. Well, you can't stuff bread down your pants. It'll squish it. Well, Kmart was across the way. And I told my sister, I was like, let me see what I can do. Famous last words for any criminal, by the way. You got one of those family members that says that all the time. Oh, let me see what I can do. Well, you better start worrying. So I told my sister, let me see what I can do. Went over there and I got a hoodie off the rack, one of those zip-up hoodies, took the tags off, put the hoodie on, wore it out, worked like a charm. The way you do it is you go back into the grocery store, the hoodie's off over your shoulder, you stuff the loaf of bread down the sleeve of the hoodie, just throw it back over your shoulder, no one can see that anything's there. You walk out and you have your sandwiches. So we did that, and of course, Kmart's got more than just hoodies. Yeah, that's one of the things that you guys need to understand about crime is a lot of the time, you know, you get a lot of people that have pressure and they feel the necessity to commit crime, maybe to feed their family, maybe they don't know what else to do and they resort to some sort of criminal activity. But almost always that criminal activity, once the crime begins, there's a difference between going in a grocery store and stealing a pack of bologna or bologna, Oscar Mayer style. There's a difference between stealing that and going in that same grocery store and trying to steal $180 a pound crab legs or filet mignon or what have you. There's a big difference, but it always does that. It always does that. For most people, they'll opt not to what is a necessity or what they feel is a necessity, but they'll go more toward the luxury type stuff. And I certainly did that. And as we, steal the hoodie from Kmart, well, Kmart's got books, clothes, jewelry, music, toys. It becomes this perverted form of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I need it. Till mom comes home, sees the stolen loot, asks where it came from. I'm 10 years old. I stand up. We found it. She's like, no, you didn't find that. My sister Denise, she stands up. We stole it. My mom, she looks at my sister. Show me how you did that. And she joins us. Not only does she join us, but she goes to get her mother to join us as well. We become this intergenerational shoplifting ring in Eastern Kentucky. Used to take these road trips. They'd go to J.C. Penney's and steal clothes and jewelry. I'd go to the bookstore, steal books because that's the guy that I am. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't want anyone to think that I blame my childhood on my choices as an adult. I don't. My choices as an adult are mine. But when you're a child, you can't help what the adults around you are doing. And as a child, you're going to follow whatever the adults in your environment are doing. Once you become an adult, you have the choice of whether you do something like that. But as a child, you have no choice. Now, that being said, I'm adamant about taking responsibility for my actions, but there's certainly a connection between my childhood and my choices as an adult. To say that there's not, it would not be truthful. It was certainly, the path was laid out that if I ever chose to commit crime, by God, I could do it. And so I grew up, my sister, before I say it, I've said it before, my sister, the reason I say that it was my choice to commit crime, and it was, my sister had the exact same upbringing that I did. She did. Now, I shielded her a lot from that so that she didn't have to go through a lot of the stuff that I went through. But she had the exact same upbringing in that same environment. She grows up to be a great teacher, a great parent, good citizen overall. I was just the kid who kept on going. So I mentioned that, those cyber crimes were not my first day on the job, and they weren't. My first day on the job was that shoplifting. And as I got older, I got more and more involved in the types of crimes that entire side of the family on my mom's side committed. So I've alluded to some of those in the past. I grew up knowing how to traffic drugs, knowing how to fake documents, how to commit insurance fraud, burning homes, faking accidents, faking stolen cars, things like that, breaking and entering, burglaries, illegally mining coal, charity fraud, all these different types of crimes. I mean, the range of crime that I was involved in or committed was vast. I mean, it was vast. There was a whole shitload of stuff from many different crime verticals that I committed. And I'm gonna drink here. So, and again, that's nothing to be proud of. I mean, I laugh about it a lot. And the reason I do a lot of laughing is because, hey, you're going to laugh or cry. And I sit there, you think about it long enough, and I'm afraid that maybe it'll come back and the abyss will overtake me, I guess. I don't know. That's that Nietzsche thing for you. But I mentioned that because, today's episode is protecting yourself against the type of person that I used to be. Now, it's more than just cybercrime. We have crime in the real world. We have crime online. And a lot of the time, those crimes these days intertwine. They interconnect. There's always a real world element to an online crime across the board. And the reason I wanted to do this show today, well, let me mention something before we get to that. I try not to be political. I like to say that I am an equal opportunity hater. I don't like either side. I despise both sides. I've not seen a politician yet that gives a damn about anyone in America except themselves. All right. It turns out that our media, our news sources aren't much better. There was a study that somebody did a study saying that, you know, all the viewers over at Fox News, they don't trust Fox News anymore. And all the viewers over at CNN, they don't trust CNN anymore. And I can understand that because both of them lie. So, of course, the Fox News people went over to ONN and Newsmax, and I'm like, holy shit, out of the frying pan into the fire. For CNN, I don't know where those guys are going. But really, there's no real good news source anymore. I remember back when the riots were going on last year, you know, they had fires in the background, and CNN's got this graphic up saying peaceful protests. So, yeah, got fake news all over the place. Now, what I wanted to mention is I really, you know, I'm an equal opportunity hater. Don't like the Republicans, don't like the Democrats, don't think any of them benefit any of us at all except themselves. They do everything they can to benefit themselves, very little to try to benefit us. The only thing that's going to benefit us, if they can figure out some way to make money off of it or get power out of it themselves, and it might trickle down a bit and help the common man or woman. But one of the things that you hear all the time is that, and you hear it from the right and you hear it from the left, whoever's running for office at that point in time, they're like, oh yeah, under our administration, crime rates have dropped. Ha! We're doing things right. We're doing things right. So the question becomes, crime rates. Has crime fallen over the past few years? When they say crime rates, they're actually being a bit disingenuous, and I'll explain why. All right. So the people that we used to arrest, I'm going to use two examples. We used to arrest a lot of people for marijuana charges. And a lot of people, a shit ton of people were smoking pot, and we were really big about arresting those people and putting them in jail. And that resulted in a large crime rate. All right. Now, we really no longer arrest those same amounts of people for marijuana. We don't. A lot of the people smoke marijuana. They don't have to worry about going to jail. They don't have to worry about getting charged with anything. They go out there and they can smoke the dope, you know, zone out, whatever the hell they're going to do. I myself, just in full disclosure, I myself have smoked a little pot in my life. A little. I didn't like it. I didn't. I think I've smoked pot, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. And yes, Virginia, I did most certainly inhale. But I didn't like it. I lost track of time. And I'm that guy who really likes to have control of things. I'm afraid that if I'm not controlling things, that shit will go haywire. So I would lose track of time. I really never liked that. I began drinking when I was 34. I began drinking when I was 34. Turns out that I do like alcohol. I like me some alcohol specifically, and it comes from the strippers that I used to date. All these strippers, they would drink champagne. They would say, oh, it's just a great high. And it turns out they were not wrong. So just full disclosure, but back to the marijuana charges. We no longer put people in prison or charge people for a lot of the marijuana charges that we used to charge them for. So the reporting of that crime has dropped. Now, has marijuana use decreased? No, it's not. It's continuing to explode. People love their pot. They love their ganja, their Mary Jane, their wicked weed, their magic weed, whatever you want to call it. They love that shit. So the numbers of people using it have significantly increased. But because we're not arresting those people, because we're not charging those people, the crime rate has fallen, okay? Look also at California and all the shoplifting that goes on. You know, this past year, we saw a lot of news about the shoplifting in California. I talked to some police officers out there and everything else, and there was a rule that as long as you kept it under, like $1,000 or $950, that you weren't being charged. So you saw people going into Walgreens and into these department stores with a black hefty garbage bag, and they would load shit up, or they would take an entire rack of clothes and just casually walk on out, and no one would stop them, no one would arrest them. I don't know which genius in California figured out that they were going to allow people to shoplift without consequence. All right, but we've not arrested any of those people, and we saw a lot of shoplifting sprees across the United States. No one arrested. In California, they were letting them do it, it was in San Francisco. And I got to tell you, I love San Francisco. I do. I think it's a fantastic city, and it's probably one of the most screwed up cities in the Union. My first trip, my first trip to San Francisco it's 2022, and you'll forgive me, but I lose track of time because of the pandemic. I was in that little pandemic chamber where you don't really understand time, the concept of time anymore. So I've lost a year, maybe a year and a half, somewhere through there. But my first trip to San Francisco, I guess, was 2018. Love the city. I wanted to go down the hill that Steve McQueen drove down in Bullitt. I wanted to visit Fisherman's Wharf, Alcatraz, all these other places, and I loved it. And before I got there, the news at that point in time was reporting that homeless people were on the streets of San Francisco, and they would just drop their pants and take a huge shit right in the middle of the sidewalk. And my response, I saw that on the news, and I hadn't been to San Francisco yet. I saw that on the news, and I was like, fake news. No, that ain't happening. Then I got to San Francisco, and I'm walking down the street, taking in the sights. And this guy undoes his pants, and he drops trowel, and he takes a big dump right in the middle of the sidewalk. And people are walking by him like nothing's going on, like it's normal. Well, I didn't think it was very normal. I was like, holy hell, that shit's real. It's real. You like that pun there? Yeah. So, and it continued to get worse, right? It continued to get worse until finally you were allowing there was ordinances that were passed. Oh, we're gonna allow shoplifting. Of course, they didn't say that, but that's what it was. Well, you think about all those people that were shoplifting, not charged, all the people that use drugs, not charged. So of course, your crime rate falls. Meanwhile, look at violent crime across the United States. Look at any of those numbers. Violent crime has significantly increased over the past few years until we're now at the point of crime rates that are rivaling Bill Clinton's tenure in office. And it was bad. It was horrible at that point in time. Now we're back at that level. So crime rates, yes, the rates have dropped, but crime has significantly increased over the years. Now we're at the cusp of a recession. We're at high inflation. We're at 7.24% inflation across the United States. They're saying we're going to get to 15 to 30% inflation because of the war in the Ukraine. Gas prices at, depending on where you are, somewhere between $4.25, maybe $7 a gallon. So all that shit spells hard time for a lot of Americans. Grocery stores, shelves, not going to have a lot of stuff on them. I walk into Walmart these days, and it's not what you want, it's what they got. That's what determines your shopping list. All right. So in that type of environment, do you think crime is going to increase or decrease? I would wager, just say, hey, I'm going to wager. I'm going to go to the casino. I'm going to say, I'll put a wager. I want to bet $1. Get me the trifecta that gas is going to go to $7 a gallon. China's going to invade Taiwan. And crime in the United States is going to increase. I want that trifecta. I think those are safe bets. Why would it increase? Well, you put pressure on people. We had the pandemic, 38 million Americans out of work, a lot of them not knowing how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to put food on the table, how they're going to keep their homes. A significant portion of those people resorted to crime. Now we've got a recession, which might very well turn into a depression. Crime increase? Yeah. People feel pressure? Yeah. When people feel pressure, sometimes they make bad decisions. And sometimes those decisions, I got to tell you, sometimes those decisions are maybe the only decision that is clearly available to someone. You don't have any food on the table. You've got kids there. Go and shoplift some food. Maybe. Or go and shoplift whatever. Yeah, so crime, I think, is going to increase. Now, that being said, this show is about protecting yourself against the type of person that I used to be. The reason I'm doing the show, my sister is a school teacher. Her husband is a medical practice manager. And then they've got one daughter, Lauren, who is my niece. I think she's 15 or 16 is what she is. And they live outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And Denise has about 8 more years until she can retire as a teacher. They're doing very good. They're doing very well with everything. They survived the pandemic. I don't think any of them got COVID. So God bless on that one. So they're doing very well. And Denise is antisocial. Now I am an introvert that fights my introversion by being an extrovert. I am really a hermit. I like to spend my ass at the house, watching movies, reading books, I like to be by myself. But I combat that by being extremely extroverted. So when I'm at a conference, when I'm giving a speech, when I'm associating with other people, I'm just way the hell out there as an extrovert. All right. Denise is basically a hermit, and she wanted to retire. When she retired, she wanted to live up in the woods, away from people. And she wanted to live by a creek so that her husband could fish. And she wanted a porch with a nice view. So last year they started to look around at different places, and they ended up buying a cabin in bumfuck Egypt, Georgia, right in the middle of deliverance country, which I got to tell you guys, my first thought was if you visit deliverance country, you get deliverance people. And that's from Eastern Kentucky, Hazard, where there's a whole shitload of deliverance type people. You gonna make you squeal like a piggy. So Denise and Richard, they buy a cabin up in BFE, Georgia. Now, there were some homes around the area. They're within line of sight to some other houses. And Denise was telling me even before they bought the house that people, before they signed the closing papers, someone had come in the house and taken some shit out of the house. So they had to change locks. They did all this stuff. And I was like, you really need to consider if you want to live there, if you trust that area. And she's like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be just fine. So Denise calls me, I don't know, 5 or 6 days ago. And we're talking, and she's like, well, I need to tell you something. I was like, okay, what? She's like, well, we went to the cabin last weekend. I was like, okay. I was like, how was that? She's like, we went to the cabin. Richard had not seen the new Spider-Man movie. I don't know if it's Far Away From Home, No Way Home, I'm Coming Home. I don't know what the hell the title of it's the newest one. All right. I've seen it, wasn't horribly plussed by it, but I saw it. I see all the Marvel movies, if you could call them movie. And here's the thing. I like superhero movies. I do. I really like them. I like the Batman movies the most. But the Marvel movies, as entertaining as they are, and I'm a huge fan, I see them all in the theaters. Then I have them all downstairs so I can watch as well. So I watch them all the time, but they're not really movies. They're more of an extended TV show. They don't really have much cinematography. You know exactly what's going to happen before it happens, blah, 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 blah. It's a basic 3-act structure, and you got the tagline at the end of the movie that's going to tie it all together and get your next movie set up. But I still enjoy that. So Richard had not seen the new Spider-Man movie. So he tells Denise, you know, hey, Doctor Strange is coming out. And before Doctor Strange comes out, I really want to watch the new Spider-Man movie so I know what the hell's going on. And Denise was like, I like Spider-Man. Let's go see Spider-Man. Lauren, my niece, was like, no, don't want to see it. I'm just going to camp my happy ass out here at the house and play with the puppy. They got a puppy about a month ago. All right, little bitty white fur ball. Got a little puppy. So Denise and Richard venture out to the films, which I guess the movie theater was maybe 30, 40 minutes away, something like that, because again, they're in the middle of BFE, Deliverance Country, Georgia. So they have to drive a distance to get to a movie theater. So they go and they're sitting there watching the movie, and about 20, 30 minutes into the movie, Richard looks over at Denise and says, hey, Lauren is texting me. Let me see what's going on. So he stands up, goes over to the side of the movie theater. You know, when you're exiting the movie, they got that lane that's shut off from the seat. So you can actually stand over there if you need to text somebody or what have you. So he's standing over there and he reads the text. Then he gets on the phone. He's on the phone a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden he's flagging Denise down, flagging her down like, hey, we got to go now. Denise gets up, goes over there. It turns out that Lauren is hiding under the bed, and there is an intruder in the house. Yeah. So Denise is telling me that, and I'm like, shit, this is like Taken. You know, except Liam Neeson ain't there. We're in the middle of hill country. The hills have eyes, Deliverance. So Lauren is hiding under the bed, hysterical. So what happened is this guy, when Denise and Richard leave, someone forgets to lock the front door. All the windows are locked, all the doors are locked except for the front door. So there's two TVs on, one in her bedroom, one in the living room. She's watching the television in the living room. She hears someone try the back door. Now, the back door, the way it's set up, you can't see into the home. So someone tries the back door. They don't see Lauren, though. All right, so Lauren hears that, freezes. She thinks they go away until she hears the front screen door open. As soon as she hears that, she beelines it into her bedroom, gets under the bed. Front door opens. Guy comes in and proceeds to go through every single room in the house, takes his time doing that, doesn't steal anything, comes into Lauren's bedroom, looks around, takes his time. Like I said, Lauren's got my sister and Richard, her dad, on the phone the entire time this is going on, the entire time. So Denise and Richard, of course, they leave the theater. Spider-Man can wait. They leave the theater, get in the car, call the cops, beeline it. They get to their cabin 20 minutes before law enforcement gets there. Law enforcement shows up, 3 cars full, 3 deep, everything else. And of course, the guy's gone by this point in time. So Denise calls me and she's telling me this. And she's like, you could tell, I mean, she's mad because it had just happened like 3 days prior. And she says, I think I need to get a gun. And my response was, yes, I think you do. And then I said, but I want you to understand what the statistics are on weapons. Basically, there's one stat that says 80% of homeowners, 80% of people in a home invasion that have weapons are shot with their own weapon. It turns out that they don't have the proper training or the willingness to use the gun. The assailant takes the gun away from them and is more than willing to use the weapon. So I tell Denise that, and she was like, I know, but I think I need a gun. And I said, yes, I think you probably do. And so this episode is about protecting yourself from the type of person that I used to be. I've never done a home invasion. I've done burglaries. I've broken into people's homes. So I'm going to talk about I'm going to tell you what I told my sister. And this is from a brother who was a lifetime criminal that was able to turn his life around, who understands criminal mentality, who understands what a criminal will do. And I didn't pull any punches with her. I'm going to tell you what I told her. I said, hey, yeah, I think you need to get a gun. Specifically, I think you need to get a 12 gauge pump shotgun. Remington 870, I prefer the tactical version myself. And Denise was like, a 12 gauge shotgun? I don't even know if I can fire that. She said, what about a pistol? And I was like, a pistol? No, I don't think a pistol will do you any good, because a pistol, you've got to aim. So you've got somebody that's coming at you, meaning to do you harm. You've got adrenaline going. You're scared. You're angry. You don't know what's going on. Potentially it's dark. You have to aim that pistol and fire it. The chances of you hitting that person, probably not going to happen. He's going to take that weapon away from you and he's going to hurt you. I said a shotgun, 12 gauge, you basically just have to point it in the right direction and you're going to hit something. And Denise says, I don't know if I could, fire it. And I didn't look at her, I had her on the phone. I was like, well, I think if somebody's coming at you, meaning to do you harm, I think you could probably fire it. Now, here's the thing. There's going to be people out there. I had one of my friends, I told him this, and he was like, well, I think maybe they just need a dog. Dogs are good. I got a 19-pound Chihuahua down there, Chihuahua mix, who has the footprint of an 80-pound Rottweiler. At least it thinks it's an 80-pound Rottweiler. It's the best little sentry in the world. I wake up of a morning, I open up the front door. I've got a doggy bed. I slide the doggy bed in front of the glass door, and the little thing just camps out right there like the best little sentry in the world and alerts me to every single person, car, leaf that falls, everything else, every single day, every minute of the day. And I pay attention to the animal. I do. If it's barking, I'm going to go see what the heck's going on. So, a dog. When I was a child, we had Dobermans. And one of the Dobermans we had was the meanest dog that I've ever seen in my life. It was just born that way. I mean, it was just a mean animal. We called it Maximilian. So, and we had to give Max away. We gave Max away to a law enforcement dog trainer. Sheriff's office had a dog trainer in the area. So we gave that Doberman to him, and someone ended up breaking into his house, and they shot and killed the dog. So my opinion on a dog as the only form of protection in the house, you get an assailant that wants to come in, he's going to kill your animal. All right. I think a dog is a tool other than a companion and a friend. I think they can also be a good security tool to alert you to any possibility of something perhaps being a little off that you might want to pay attention to. But it's just a tool, one of many which needs to be used. So I told Denise, I was like, look, I said, I think I would suggest the Remington 870, 12 gauge pump, because, and I told her, I was like, because, you pump that shotgun, that's one of those noises that one of those sounds that nobody in their life wants to hear, but everyone knows. You pump that, that's telling somebody that's after you that, oh shit, this is what they've got. And they know you aim in the right direction, pull the trigger, you're going to go through, you're going to hurt somebody. So I said, you need that. You need double aught buckshot as well. And I said, you need to be trained on it and all three of them need to be trained because they've never really fired a weapon. They've never really owned weapons. So all three of them need proper training. All three of them need to be firing that weapon. And I told them that, told Denise that. So I don't know. And I even offered to pay for it I was like, I looked it up and I was like, look, it looks like it's only about $350. I said, I'll cover it for you. I said, but I would not go back in that house without a weapon. And she's like, well, I'm not going to be a victim. And I was like, well, you're already a victim. She's like, no, I'm not. I was like, yes, you are. I said, right now you're angry. I said, but it's going to hit you when you go back in that cabin and lay down and try to go to sleep that night. It's going to hit you. The fear, the worry, the stress, the anxiety, you're going to feel that right then. And I said, you don't need to go back in that house without a cabin, without a weapon. So Denise was telling me, she's like, well, Richard had a security system. And I got quiet because I already knew. So I paused for a second. Then I was like, it was wireless, right? And she was like, yeah. So I told her, I was like, look, first of all, if you're going to do a security system, do a proper security system, a wired one. That way nothing interrupts the filming of the cameras because the cameras were not working. They didn't get a picture of the guy or anything else. So I told Denise, this episode is about how to protect yourself. And I'm going to tell you what I told my sister and what I've said before about cybersecurity. What I've said is that criminals out there, cyber criminals, have a toolbox. And in their toolbox, they have a variety of tools with which to attack and victimize you. They have the low-level tools, they have the high-level tools, and they will pick the tools best suited for the job at hand. As a defender, as someone that could potentially be victimized, you need a toolbox as well. That's online and that's in the physical world. And that toolbox needs a variety of tools with which to protect yourself, to defend yourself. You know, the dog, I think the dog is great if you've got a dog that will alert. I don't care if the dog alerts on leaves. I've got that damn Chihuahua. I got a leaf that falls on the ground. That thing is like, and lets me know about it. I don't care. As long as you're paying attention to it. All right. As long as you're understanding that that animal's trying to communicate something to you, a dog can be a very effective tool. I do not think the dog is the only tool. Whether you've got a Rottweiler, a Pit, Doberman, or a Chihuahua, it's just a tool. So, you know, they've got an animal there, and I told her, I was like, you need to get that dog where it's, you know, alerting on anything that is questionable outside. So I told her, she's got the dog. I told her to get a weapon, but she has to be properly trained on the weapon, has to know how to use it. And more than that, has to be willing to use it. And I told her that. I was like, look, you don't want to buy a weapon unless you're willing to use it. You don't pull a weapon on somebody unless you're ready to kill them. And you don't shoot to wound. You shoot them to kill them, because they will do the same to you. If you're not willing to do that, if you don't have the capacity to do that, you don't want that weapon. And the entire time I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, well, and I told her this. I was like, look, you move to deliverance country, you're going to get deliverance people. So I told her, I told her about the weapon, and there may be people out there. I'm sure there are. Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, I don't give a damn about anyone's political opinion. I don't care what you think about gun control. I don't care. There are 300 million guns in the United States of America. 300 million. All right. I am not pro. I am not anti-firearm. I am a felon. I can't own any guns. My wife is building quite the arsenal, though, and she has a Remington 870 in her collection, locked away. I believe in proper training. I believe in protecting yourself. I think that a firearm can be a very effective tool if you're properly trained on how to use it, willing to use it, and have the capacity to use it. If you don't, then you should not have that tool in your toolbox. You should not. So I told Denise what I would do. I was like, look, what I would do is I would get the Remington 870. I got a 12-gauge pump shotgun, double-aught buckshot. Get trained on it. All three of you trained on it. All three of you know how to fire it. Have it loaded at all times. All right. Have it loaded at all times. An unloaded firearm is useless. Okay. And she was like, well, a pistol. I was like, no, you have to aim that thing. And for all those idiots out there, you know, I heard a couple of years ago, there was the argument, oh, an AR-15 is it's an outstanding home defense rifle. No, your best home defense is a 12-gauge pump shotgun. Double-aught buckshot. AR-15. Give me a freaking break. That's those idiots that say that are like, oh, they're going to take our firearms away from us. I don't give a damn about your AR-15. I care about home defense, and I care about protecting my sister. That's why I told her this. Get properly trained. Be willing to use it. If you can't do that, don't get it. So I said, get the firearm. I said, get your ass on Amazon. Buy some of those wildlife cameras, because they've got trees around the perimeter of the property. I said, buy some of those wildlife cameras, point those damn cameras at your cabin. That way, and make sure nobody sees you putting them up. That way, whoever's coming on your property, whoever's trying to get in your house, you got a clear snapshot of that son of a bitch. I said, probably you're going to find out who this guy is pretty quick. So she's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And I said, then once you get your weapon, once you got your wildlife cameras set up, then go get a proper wired security system and get it working. A tool that's not working is useless. So I told her to do that. So I'm going to say, and I told her this, and this is the thing. You know, I've said twice now, or maybe three times, you move to deliverance country, you get deliverance people. Everyone needs to be aware of their environment. have environmental awareness. And what I mean by that, I when I go to a city, if I'm traveling with a family, sometimes I get lost. And let's be honest, men are not the best in the world about asking for directions. Now, we've got the phones these days, but sometimes in cities you can't get good signals and you end up taking a wrong turn someplace. Like, for example, if you're in Los Angeles, it's very easy to take a wrong turn and end up someplace that you don't want to be. And I do that in a lot of cities. And usually when I do that, there's a comment from the cheering section in the car of, oh, he's got us in a bad neighborhood again. Just because it's a poor neighborhood does not mean it's a bad neighborhood. So it's important that we have proper environmental and situational awareness. And what I mean by that is you should not come to a situation or an environment with a bias, a prejudice, or a preconception. You should let the environment or the situation tell you what's at hand. Take an objective, not a subjective, but an objective look at the environment or the situation, and let that data tell you what's going on. Are you in a bad neighborhood? Are you in a bad situation? Probably. I mean, if you're just driving around, probably you're okay. All right. Now, that being said, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. There are certainly some streets, depending on the time of day or night, that you probably don't want to find yourself traveling on. Just one of those things. But you should always have proper environmental and situational awareness. Objective environmental or situational awareness. You've got to get rid of those biases, those preconceptions, those prejudices that load your thought patterns of where you're at or the situation that you're involved in, okay? It's difficult to do that, but I think that's the number one thing, both online and in the real world, that people need to do. Objectively look at your environment or situation, okay? Certainly when Denise and Richard moved to or bought the cabin in BFE, if they would have properly looked at their environment, because they were telling me this stuff, and I was like, you really need to consider this. They were telling me everything that they were seeing, and it sounded like they needed to take a step back and take an objective look at the area. They did not do that, and as such, they have got deliverance people paying visits to their home. So I told her, get a security system, a proper one, get the wildlife cameras, make sure you report to law enforcement, everything else. And I think that for proper home security, so if we're talking about that, do you have lighting on the property? That's what I asked. What kind of lights do you have? Do you have perimeter lights that light up the outside of the house as well as the outlying yard so you can see anyone that might be in the yard or approaching? Do you have that? If not, you need it. Cameras. There's a reason if you go into a retail establishment or a convenience store or something like that, clothing store or something like that, there's a reason that a lot of those cameras, you've always got a camera that's pointing at the cash register. Turns out that a lot of fraud that happens is employee fraud. So the cameras a lot of the time are there to watch the employees, not necessarily the customers. You've got cameras that do that, but the employees are supposed to watch the customers as well as whatever security system is there. All right. So do you have cameras on your property? Are the cameras pointed at the house and outside? Because that's what you want to know. You want to know who's approaching. All right. I'm going to use the example of say you don't have a security system, but you went and bought the Ring doorbell system. For those who don't know, the Ring system is that thing that either it's part of the doorbell, it's right above the doorbell outside. That way you can see anyone that's coming up to your door. You're alerted to it by text message. It sends a nice little SMS. Hey, this person's coming up to your door. Do you know them? And if something's wrong, you can do something at that point. Now, Ring, when they first came out, they advertised that as a tool that will stop crime. No. I mentioned that you need to use the tools properly as well. And most people who buy the Ring system, they start out using that tool because it is just a tool. They start out using that tool properly. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when they first install it, they install that camera, that Ring camera, where it's looking at the porch, but it's also got the front yard and maybe part of the street as well. It's got a nice view of everything that's going on in front of your home. Well, it sends a text message that alerts you to everything that passes by: cars, people, cats, small squirrels or large squirrels, of everything that passes in front of that camera view. So after 3 or 4 days or a week, and you get 20,000 text messages about those squirrels that are fighting in the front yard, you get tired of that shit, and you either turn off your notifications, but more than likely you go back and you reseat the camera to where it's just pointing and focused on your porch. So it just alerts anybody that pops up on the porch. That is an improper use of that tool. Why? Well, because I'm going to know, as a criminal, I'm going to know when I pass by your property and say it's Christmas time, you've got some packages on the porch or whatever. I'm doing some porch piracy. UPS has left a package, has left my present on your porch. It's in your name, but it's mine. So I pass by, I see that new television or new laptop or new PlayStation 5 that's on your porch. I pass by and see it the first time, circle the block, come back around, notice you've got the camera set up on your porch. I know already that it's probably only monitoring your porch. That's the second pass. Third pass, I come back around, I park the car out of sight of anything that might pop up on the camera, park the car out of sight of that, get out. I'm already wearing the hat or the hoodie because I'm in the neighborhood to commit crime. Pull the hat down or pull the hoodie up, go up on the porch, get my present that just happens to be on your porch. At that point in time, you're alerted by text messages someone's on your porch. Are you going to be able to notify law enforcement and stop the crime from happening in time? No, you are not. So I get my package. I may even wave at the camera, walk away. I get away with the crime and get out of the neighborhood before law enforcement can even think about getting there. Now, that's a package. That's just stealing a package on a porch. If you're in the home and someone means to break into your home and cause you harm, and you've only got that pointed at the porch, are you going to see the cars that are in the driveway? Well, maybe not. Are you going to have any evidence at all except the people that are coming up on the porch ready to break into your home who are already disguised at that point? No, you're not. So I would advise people, it's important that if you have a tool that you're using, a security tool, a weapon, a lighting outside, camera systems, security systems like that, it's important to use them properly, to have to make sure that you're not using them where it makes things easy on you, but you're using them where they're properly doing their job. So I've talked about cameras, I've talked about lighting, I mentioned the Ring doorbell system, landscaping in the yard. If you're looking, do you have bushes or someplace that a criminal can hide behind? If you look behind, are bushes right outside your front door that a criminal can hide in? Yes, that shit happens. So you need to be aware of that. Locks. Do you have locks on all the windows and the doors? Do you use them? A lock doesn't do any good if you don't have it locked. So it's important to use all this stuff, all right? And more importantly, it's to have proper, unbiased, objective, situational, and environmental awareness. Use all these tools, to get you a toolbox and acquire the tools that you will use, get properly trained on those tools, and use those tools in the manner in which they're meant to be used. So that's, potentially a weapon, potentially a dog, proper lighting, proper security system, cameras, proper landscaping, locks on everything, all that, and use it properly. Be aware of your environment, use the tools, get you a toolbox with all those tools. All right. That's what I told my sister. That's what I told my sister. And I told my sister, I was like, we were talking and I was like, I want you to understand, this guy didn't steal anything. So he was looking for somebody. If he would have found your daughter, he would have raped your daughter. And I said it right like that. And she was like, I know. And I was like, well, then I would not go back in that house without a weapon and being trained on that weapon. So I don't know if they, I've not talked to her in 4 or 5 days. I don't know if they went back this past weekend or not, or if I know they didn't get trained if they bought a weapon. They have not been trained yet, but I hope that she does what she needs to do to protect her and her family. And I would advise everyone to do the same. No, I'm not telling everyone to go get them a 12-gauge shotgun. I am saying that we're going to see a significant increase in crime. Crime is continuing to grow, regardless of what any damn politician is out there saying, because, hey, we're in office and crime rates are dropping. Yes, crime rates are dropping. Crime is exploding. All right. So crime is going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to grow. You can bet on that, especially with the economy looking like it's going to go deep south for everyone. So we're going to see that. So I'm not saying you need to go out and get your damn self a shotgun. I'm saying that depending on who you are, it might be a good tool to have, but it requires proper training, willingness, the capacity to use it, things like that. Okay. That should be your toolbox as someone in the real world, the physical world, not the online world. You do need a toolbox to protect yourself from the predators that are out there. And I want to be clear. Not everyone is a predator. Not everyone is a criminal. Most people are very good people, but we do have some people out there who are not. We do have some people out there who are bad people who will harm you. And I promise you, speaking from being a former criminal myself, I promise you that a criminal is much more willing to do something than you are. If they are willing to break into your house, I promise you they are willing to hurt you as well, either to keep you from calling law enforcement and putting them in prison, or maybe they're breaking in your house to cause you physical harm, but they are willing to hurt you, much more willing than you probably are to defend yourself. So you have to be willing to use whatever tools that you've got. Now, this is not the ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha episodes that we sometimes do. And I wanted to talk, that's the physical world. That's just my opinion on what people need to do. You need to get your toolbox with the proper tools, learn how to use those proper tools. That may be a dog, it may be a weapon, it's security system, proper lights, proper landscaping, locks on all the doors and windows, proper situational and environmental awareness. You need to make sure you've got that in place as well. Know what's going on. You know, when I'm an actor. I was an actor, and I had a very promising acting career at one point, which just didn't pan out because I went toward a life of crime. Yeah. Things would have been far different had I pursued a stage acting career, but I didn't. As an actor, depending on who you're learning under, you're taught that on stage and in the real world, there are two different types of people. There are predators and there are prey. All right. And you're going to follow that. You're not always a predator and you're not always prey. Depending on the situation that you're in will determine who you are in that situation. So if you go to a restaurant, for example, and you see someone eating and that person's eating and they're looking all over the place. You're like, oh yeah, their head's bouncing, talking and gabbing. Then you look at somebody else and they're just concentrating on the food. They've got their head down. They're just eating the food. Just bam, 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 bam. Which is the predator? Which is the prey? Well, the prey is that individual that's looking around, just not really paying attention much of anything, just taking in everything. That's your prey. The predator is the one that's just concentrating on the meal. That's what they're doing. Same thing if you see someone walking down the street, see someone that's looking around, gawking at everything, sightseeing, that's usually your prey. And then your predator is the person that has their head down, just concentrating and focused on one primary thing, just walking with a purpose. All right. It's like that in the real world. It's like that online. There are predators and there are prey. You do not want to be prey. If you are prey, then you need to make sure that you have proper protection in place. And there are certainly predators out there that will seek to victimize you. So you need to make sure that you can protect yourself against that potential crime that's out there. If you're not doing that, there's something wrong. All right. I talk all the time about protecting yourself, about trusting your environment, trusting people around you. I do believe in that, but that comes with trust, but verify everything. Know your surroundings. Know your surroundings. And that doesn't mean that you don't have proper protections in place. So that being said, let's talk about how do you protect yourself in an online world? Because I am, as the Secret Service said, I am that former United States most wanted cyber criminal. I am the original internet godfather. Nothing to be proud of, but I know my shit when it comes to online fraud, crime, identity theft, everything else. When I give a presentation, when I talk to people, when I talk to people with AARP or I'm talking to a crowd, I always end each presentation with talking about how to protect yourself from the type of person that I used to be. All right. First thing out of the gate, there are three things you need to do. Three things. Freeze the credit of every single person in the house. Every person in the house, including your children, because children are the #1 victims of identity theft. 25%, 1 in 4, will be a victim of ID theft. That's medical fraud, it's synthetic fraud, it's tax fraud, 25%. So freeze the credit of every single person in the house. Good news, credit freezes became free September 18th, 2018, roughly 4 years ago. You would think that people would flock to freeze their credit. Today, United States population, roughly 12% of our population has a credit freeze in place. Something's wrong with that. It's a tool that can be used. It's a highly effective tool, but people don't put credit freezes in place, and that leaves you wide open to a criminal like I used to be, to set up new accounts in your name, all these other types of crime that I can commit. So a credit freeze, if you've not done that, go do it. Credit freeze, every single person in the house, including the kids. All right. Understand that a credit freeze only stops new account fraud. A creditor cannot pull your credit report without your permission. A criminal can't get your credit report without your permission. So it stops all new account fraud. Works great for kids. Outstanding for kids. But we as adults, we have existing accounts. We've already got credit cards open, things like that. Credit freezes do not stop crime, that type of crime. If I'm looking to take over your credit card account or I buy your stolen credit card details, credit freeze doesn't stop me from doing that. So the second step is you have to monitor accounts and place alerts on those accounts where you can. For example, and when I say monitor accounts, I mean all accounts, because these days, all types of accounts have value to criminals. That's your merchant accounts, your Amazon account, your Apple account, your Nike account, all those have value. It's your credit cards, it's your bank statements, it's your tax records, it's your email accounts. Every single account has value to a criminal. So you have to monitor those accounts and you have to place alerts on those accounts where you can. For example, Discover Card has a $0 alert, meaning that if I go on the dark web and buy your Discover Card for roughly $12, which is what I can get it for, and I just ping that card to see if it's alive, you get a text message saying, hey, some son of a bitch is trying to steal your money. You can have the card locked down, have it taken care of. So freeze the credit, every single person in the house. Monitor accounts, place alerts on those accounts where you can. The third thing, and it's a biggie, the third thing, how many people out there use the same password and login across multiple websites? Yeah, come on, it's like an AA meeting. Come on, my name is Brett Johnson. I use the same password and login across multiple websites. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. 80% of the population does that, 80%. Now, that's a problem with this thing called credential stuffing. You see, I might send out an email or phishing email that looks like it comes from Bank of America. Your level of awareness may be high enough that you're like, yeah, no, obviously that's a phishing email. I'm not going to fall for that shit. But what happens if I send out a phishing email that looks like it comes from Hulu? Is your level of awareness going to be as high? No, it's not. You're probably going to look at it and say, Hulu? Anyone even watch Hulu? Only thing they've got is A Handmaid's Tale, and that second season sucked. And it did. I don't know how they ruined that show from the first season, which was brilliant, to the second season, which is unwatchable. I think they may have a third season. I don't care, because the second one, woo, worse than the last season of Game of Thrones. Just saying. But no, your level of awareness will not be as high. But if you're like 80% of the population and you're using the same password and login across multiple websites, it's an automated program for a criminal. Little Billy, 400 pounds in his mom's basement, Matrix background flowing in the back. He plugs those credentials in. He goes to sleep for the night. While he sleeps, the program tries to log into tens of thousands of different websites while he's asleep. He wakes up the next morning. He's got access to your bank statements, your tax records, your credit card statements, your Hulu account, and that's your ass at that point. So the answer, because we're never trained on how to come up with a secure password, we're not taught that. We go to a website and it says use so many characters, throw in a couple of symbols, some uppercase, lowercase stuff. It's got a graph on there that says week, week, week. We start putting stuff in until it says finally strong. And we're like, yes, strong. No clue what got it as strong. And we tend to use that same password and log in across multiple sites. The answer right now is a password manager. Yeah. It generates secure passwords for you. It changes those passwords for you. The only thing you need to do is remember one main password. So use a password manager. Those are the three big ones. There are other things you can do, but those are the three big ones. I don't want to overload everybody with stuff. Next thing. So that's a three, right? Freeze credit, monitor accounts, place alerts, use a password manager. Period. Do that. And if you understand how cybercrime operates, because at the end of the day, criminals are they're committing crime because of status cash ideology. Usually it's cash. They're looking to steal cash, all right? If they're looking to steal cash, they're not looking for people who are really well protected. They're looking for the lowest hanging fruit. They're wanting to put in the least amount of effort to profit the most. So if you look at a tree, they're trying to pick those people with the lowest hanging fruit, the people who don't have security in place, the people who haven't done those three things that I mentioned of freezing your credit, monitoring accounts, placing alerts, password manager. Most people don't do that. Like I said, 12% of the population have a credit freeze in place. So do those three things. That makes sure that you're not that lowest hanging fruit. You're up there in that tree. And I promise you, those criminals, unless you're that idiot on Facebook who's saying, I own 8,000 Bitcoins. If you're that person, you're a victim in waiting and you should be hit. I'm just saying, no, you shouldn't be hit. But if you're saying stuff like that, you're going to be looked at. Just saying. All right. So those three things. Understand your place in the cybercrime spectrum because you have one. The way a criminal will attack you depends on who you are and what you do. For example, if you're CEO, or you work in a payroll department, the way that I will seek to victimize you differs from if you've worked food service for 20 years. I'll still get you, but it's different. If you're CEO or payroll, I'll try to maybe launch some sort of business email compromise. All right, get you to, instead of sending some payment to somebody that you usually send them to their bank account, I'll just get you to change the banking information and send it to my account. Very easy to do that, by the way. But if you work food service, well, maybe I can't do business email compromise. So I'll do new account fraud, student loan fraud, take over existing accounts, maybe hit your retirement accounts, stuff like that. And so it depends on who you are and what you do as to how I will attack you. The same thing applies to a business. What your business does will determine how I attack you. Do you have data that I can break into the company, steal the data and resell on the black market, or is your data specific to your company? Is it data that your company must have in order to operate? That will determine whether I break in and steal the data and resell it, or whether I launch a ransomware attack against your company, lock that data down, hold it for ransom. So understand your place in the cybercrime spectrum and design security for the way that you will be attacked. All right, that's what you do. Get yourself a toolbox. I mentioned it before. Cyber criminals have a toolbox, and in their toolbox, they have a variety of tools with which to attack you. They've got the low-level social engineering tools like spoofed phone calls, phishing emails, things like that. They've got the high-level tools like Mimikatz, Eternal Blue, Eternal Romance, things like that. As a defender, you need a variety of tools with which to defend yourself. Know how to use those tools. Use those tools properly, all right? Get yourself a toolbox. Understand, I mentioned it for the real world. It's no different, absolutely no different online. Understand your environment. Understand your situation. Have that environmental and situational awareness. Have it in an unbiased way. You must get rid of biases. You must get rid of preconceptions and prejudices. Let the environment or the situation tell you in an objective way what's going on, what you need to worry about. All right. Understand that. Protect yourself. Now, this is today's episode. And it's a doozy. It's not been a fun one. I don't know. Some things have been fun. Some people are going to agree with some of the stuff I've said. Some have not. End of the day, I don't care. All right. End of the day, I did. And I told my sister the way that I think that she should protect herself. I think that I was proper in doing that. So if you don't agree with it, sorry. Maybe you'll agree with an episode in the future. All right. But hey, this is the Brett Johnson Show. And as we close, what do we say? We say stay safe, because in today's world, we need to. Stay safe out there. Stay secure, truly, and stay vigilant. More importantly, this is the Brett Johnson Show. At the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you so much.